Hello my fellow animal lovers and history buffs. In today's episode we're stepping inside the courtroom. No, it's not about corrupt politicians or notorious outlaws on trial. We're talking animals in court. Yes, real trials, judges, witnesses, lawyers and verdicts, including sometimes even public executions. This is the story of animals on trial. Order! Order! Between the 13th and 18th centuries, animal trials across Europe took place, from pigs to dogs, even insects. Animals were formally prosecuted for crimes ranging from theft through to murder. In 1386, a pig from Normandy, France, was formally charged for killing a child. According to reports, the child was laying in their crib, sleeping while his two young parents were making love in the hay. The pig was nearby and was said to have crept up to the child, maiming his face so badly that the child sadly passed away a few days later. So the pig was arrested and brought to court, dressed in a white shirt and waistcoat, and sentenced to death by hanging. This wasn't a symbolic act. The records show that the trial followed the legal processes of the day, and that included witness testimony and an appointed legal representative for the pig. And sadly for pigs, this case wasn't unusual. That's because in Europe at the time they roamed freely through the villages. They lived alongside people, so sometimes would cause injury, especially to children. So in a time where forensic science didn't exist, if a child had passed away and a pig just happened to be nearby, minding their own business, the pig was blamed. Legal historian E.P. Evans documented dozens of similar cases across France, Switzerland and Germany where pigs were executed for violent acts against humans. Pigs weren't the only animals that ended up in the dock. Moles, storks, reptiles and dolphins even found themselves in trouble. Even insects were prosecuted, yet certain species like locusts, rats and weevils were not considered under human control, only God's control. That meant if they were up to no good, ecclesiastical church court cases were held.
Now you listen here! He's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy!
For example, in 16th century France, weevils were tried for damaging vineyards. The legal process involved formal complaints, church-led injunctions, and even a legal defence for the insects. In one case in St. Julian, the court ordered the weevils to leave the land within 6 days of notice, otherwise they'd face excommunication, meaning the weevils would no longer be protected by the church's prayers or blessings. Needless to say, the weevils didn't leave. Cats were also regularly prosecuted. This was especially the case for black cats during the witch trials of early modern Europe, and that peaked around 1550 to 1650. Now that's because cats were often associated with evil, and some were even burned alongside their human companions. Our canine companions also faced the rough side of the law, often being trialled for biting and being involved in the perceived human wrongdoing. One particularly strange case was in 1750 involving a donkey from Geneva and a French peasant named Jacques who took advantage of the donkey, and they were both hauled in court. Witnesses came forward for the poor donkey, testifying to donkey's good behaviour and swore donkey had always been chaste and pure. The judge let the donkey off and convicted Jacques, and this resulted in him being burnt to the stake. Although these cases do seem strange, they reveal something about the human attitudes and beliefs of the time. Animals were viewed as moral agents, capable of breaking laws. So these animal trials helped to maintain order, they provided explanations for human misfortune, and they also acted as a sort of moral theatre to deter humans from pursuing a life of crime themselves. By the 1700s, the practice of putting animals on trial began to fade, thanks to the Enlightenment. Now, this movement focused on reason and scientific thinking, helping to change how people viewed animals, and that was from moral beings to biological organisms. So, advances in science and the rise of behavioural theories led to animals being seen more as instinct-driven rather than rational. Into the 18th century, animals were no longer defendants in court. They were subjects of study, and by the 19th century, forward thinkers like Charles Darwin were challenging the old idea of animals as moral offenders and instead showing that animals are emotional, social beings shaped by evolution rather than judged through a human lens of right or wrong. Yet today, there are still echoes of these animal trials. Consider how often you may have heard someone describe their dog as looking guilty after they've nicked a sandwich from the countertop, or label their pets as naughty. And legal systems around the world continue to wrestle with how to define animals. Are they property, sentient beings, or something in between? Only recently, there was a landmark case in the United States involving Duke the Dachshund. Duke was hit by a reckless driver, and his guardian sought damages for emotional distress and arguing that the current laws, which treat pets as property, are outdated. The court in Brooklyn agreed, setting a precedent by recognising dogs as immediate family, not just possessions. Time will tell how this decision shapes future cases, especially as more courts face disputes over who gets the dog during divorce or how to value the life of a pet in law. But that's it for today's episode on animals who are facing trials in court. So I hope you've enjoyed this story, and if you have, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more strange but true tales from animals in history. Bye for now.